Doug's Way here once again, and today's video is going to be about capacity testing of some cells that I removed from my house. Now, in the video, I'll mention that I removed these cells back in February, March, but I actually removed them back in January. I went back and looked, and I also mentioned that these cells were like 3 years old. The 280Ns were 4.5 years old from the day they shipped out of port to me, and the 280Ks were 3 years and 9 months old from the day they shipped out of port. So keep that in mind when you watch the video here. Let's get started on the capacity test. So what I've been doing here is these cells here came out of my house. The first 8 here are 280Ks, and they were grade B, and they were not matched. You'll see some discoloration on this one here, but that actually was from me trying to get the cell loose. It was actually stuck to the plate, so I put a little solvent on the end, and that's what that discoloration is. But this cell here actually was the one that always gave me the most trouble. It's more of a runner. And then after you'd quit charging, it would drop down in volts. But what's interesting to know, and we'll get there here pretty quick. But anyway, I pulled these out, and the other 8 here are 280Ns. So, you know, they were a mismatch, but I ran them for 2 years in my house, and they were always under compression. And they just shut off here, and they had tested 278 amp hours, and we actually have 12 amp hours left here to go. So I was at 280, so we're at 268. So I'll have to do the math here later. But looking here at the BMS data, and that cell number 1 actually is the one that held up the best. Now that's what's interesting about it. And I always say it's a case of cell capacity and not basically internal resistance that causes the difference in charging here. But obviously cell number 3 is the one that caused the low voltage disconnect, and that's obviously my weak cell, and I'll have to mark that one. Basically, I'm going to test these all here in groups of 4, and I might even recharge this and then retest it again just to make sure. But these were all charged up to 3.65 volts and discharged all the way down here till we hit low voltage disconnect. So interesting to note that we have lost some cell capacity, because I know these were tested and tested out at 278 amp hours here. I used them for 2 years, and they've been sitting here probably since February, March, and it is November now. So I might just recharge them, retest, and then we'll just see if it improves at all, but I don't think it will. All right, I'll get the rest of these done, and we'll have a final report. Well, I got all these cells tested, and the results were quite interesting, and I'm going to share those shortly here. But a little bit of background. Again, I ran these for 2 years in my house. The deal was I bought these 280Ns, and I was going to build 2 12-volt batteries trolling batteries for my boat, and then I changed my mind and just bought some Zooms. Whether that was a smart decision or not, I don't know yet. We'll see down the road. Meanwhile, then I was building my battery bank for my house, and then I decided, hey, let's use them 8 cells, and then you couldn't get any more 280Ns. You can only get 280Ks. So I said, all right. So then COVID was going, and I bought these grade Bs. So actually, these batteries might even be 4 years old. I don't know. Anyway, I bought these grade Bs, and I regret it ever since. So cell number 1 here was always a runner, and as such, it limited on what I could charge these to. I could only charge them usually to 3.45 volts, I think is what I always charge them to. The problem you run into is cell number 1 was such a runner. What would happen is it would run way ahead of the other ones. The Batrium couldn't react fast enough and balance it fast enough. So it would run way ahead of the other ones, and it would get close to 3.60 volts. If it hit 3.65, of course, then it would trip the shunt trip breaker and shut the whole system down. And at the time, I didn't have a Luan box there, so basically my house would go dark. So in order to get around that problem, I would only charge to 3.45 volts per cell. And, you know, of course, I run some reduced capacity there too, you know. But I ran it for 2 years that way, and I finally got tired of it and replaced them. I bought some Scoble cells. They had a deal going. I think I paid $1,100 some dollars for them. Those were a nice bunch of cells. I was pretty impressed with those. So anyway, I was going to actually put these in my golf cart. I ended up buying a DC house battery for that, and these are going in my work trailer eventually, but I'm going to use them here in the shop during the winter because I don't need them in the trailer, and I'm going to put them in this Luann box. So being I had them out, I'm going to get them tested, and I'm going to get them checked out. So I'm going to show you here the test results next, and hope you enjoy it. So let's show those results, and let's get started. All right, so here's the test results. The 280Ks, when they were new, tested 278 amp hours. They tested here. They're about 3 years old here in November 2025. The first four with the runner cell tested 268 amp hours, which is a 4.2% capacity loss. The runner cell was actually not the lowest capacity, which is interesting, you know. But those were grade B cells, and they were not matched. So that's the first thing that was wrong with those cells, and that's a lesson to be learned. Don't buy grade B cells, buy grade A. Get them matched, and you'll be a lot happier. Okay, the second set, which is interesting, tested 266 amp hours, which is a 4.8% capacity loss. And in 2 years, I never noticed any deviation in those cells on the Batrium BMS. And normally you'd see a deviation there because it's all shown in a graph form, and you'd pick up on that. And I never recall seeing anything in 2 years of using those. So that was a surprise to me. Okay. On the 280Ns, and those actually were probably a little over 3 years old because they probably sat around here for 8 months to a year, and then I ordered the 280Ks to go with them because you couldn't get a 280N anymore, and then put them all together and used them. And of course, you know, they've been sitting here for same amount of time as the 280Ks, but they were older. The first set tested 272 amp hours, which was a 3% capacity loss, and the second group of four tested 271 amp hours, which is a 3.3% capacity loss. And those had tested new at 280.5 amp hours. Now, the average loss, of course, here for between all four groups was 3.83%, you know, but we really want to know what our maximum loss is for the whole pack, which is 4.8%, which is pretty well in line considering these are about 3 years old. I've done some reading, and, you know, and some will say, yeah, you know, a 2% capacity loss in the first year is considered normal. I mean, I've seen people lose 10% in 2 years, you know, but you got to remember, these cells were always in compression, always charging compression. That's just the way I am. And, you know, so I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, you know, you start looking, you know, at a 5% loss in 3 years. Basically to get down to 80%, you know, so you take that times 4, that's 12 years, you know, you're looking at, you know, that's not that many cycles, you know. So yeah, that's the part that bothers me. But, you know, but then again, you look at the flip side, you know, as a 3% loss, you know, on the 280Ns, basically that translates into, to get down to 80% capacity, would be 7 times 3 would be 21 years. So, you know, does calendar aging play into it? Yes, I do believe it does. But these batteries were always in my basement, and they were kept cool. In the wintertime, the temperature actually would range from 13 degrees Celsius to 15 degrees Celsius. And in the summertime, I don't think they were ever over, I'd say it probably never gets over 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius. I can't remember. But I do know in the wintertime I watch it, and it's never below 13 degrees Celsius. But, you know, they're colder. And these were on the third shelf down, which means they're going to be around in that 14 degrees Celsius range, because the bottom ones are always going to be the coldest. So, yeah, I'm somewhat happy with what I've seen here. The lesson learned, of course, is don't buy grade B cells. One of my things is always have them in compression. I'm just that way, and some guys will argue it, but that's the way I'm going to roll. And now I'm going to put these in a Luan box, and the problem I run into here is I'm not going to be able to have foam in between every cell, so I don't know what I'm going to do here yet. So we'll get started on that, and then I'll show what I ended up with. Oh, I got the cells here all in the box. Ends are on this side, K's are on this side. This end I just made a battery cable, no big deal. Cells had a little swelling, so I used 5/16 nut on each screw for a shim, and took all the foam out and just used an FRP sheet in between. So it still all fits, so no big deal. Right now I'm in top balancing, and this thing will be done. So later. So when I pulled the cells out, I actually taken some video here. I planned on doing a video at the time, and I got digging back through and found that the video was taken back in January, and so that's how I knew I'd pulled them in January. So I'm going to show some of that footage here that I took then, and you can see what the condition of the cells were when I pulled them on out. Leads are disconnected from the K9. Negative battery disconnected. Took all the balance leads off. One thing about it, I got to take all the fuses out and just laid that off to the side. That's on a dowel. Had to take all my temp sensors, got them laying over the side, and I numbered every cell, so you know which ones they are. The first 8 are 280Ks, and the last 8 are 280Ns. The Ks were all grade Bs, and I've never been impressed with them. So I got the new cells all in. Took a while. I had to screw around with some bypass leads. Of course, you got to clean everything, and I had some trouble with that last cell. It was like glued right to the wall, and I had to take a solvent and pour on the top to get it loosened up. Finally got it to wiggle and got it off of there. So anyway, it was 3:04 when I started, and soon I'll be checking here on that foam on that first cell I pulled out and see how those are doing. Cells all look nice and flat, so that's a good thing. I'm going to put them back together and then load test them and just see what the capacity is. So this is the first cell I pulled out, cell 16, and there's still a ridge here. I don't know how long it'll take. You notice here there's a piece here on the bottom, and that is the 280Ns were slightly shorter than the Ks. And I dug through Menards there in the flooring section there, and they had free samples and it just happened to be the right height. So took some VHP tape, fastened right to the bottom of the cell. That way they were all the same height, and I didn't mess around with matching the terminal height. So anyway, I don't know how long these will go, but as far as flatness here, I'll look down the top, and there ain't no bulging to that thing. They're nice and flat. I don't know if I can get this tape out of here. I could try, but on a different one. But I'll leave this one for now because it's our test subject. There's the foam off of cell number 2. I was able to get it off. I got to work it a little bit. But if you get looking at it here, you can see that there's a speckled center here, and then it's dark here, and then of course it gets speckled again here, and it's speckled again here, and then there's a dark spot there. And this is the side that it came off of. I couldn't see any bulging to it, and I assume that what I feel here, I think was there from, when they were new. I mean, really, when you look at it in the light, you can tell when there's a bulge because the light will curve, So, it looks good. Here, I'll look at this side. That side that, was up against the other cell. And I don't see no bulge in there. And of course, I don't have a straight edge down here, but when I get up the shop, I will. But, they all look pretty good. I'm pretty impressed. So, these were back before even Poron was readily available. Actually, I used neoprene on these. So, yeah, as long as you pull the foam off, as long as you just kept a steady, slow pressure on it and just kind of worked it, you could get it off of there. So, anyway, we'll get these together and get testing them. Oh, this is cell number 1, which is what cell number 2's foam would have been against it. And as you go across it, I can feel a slight ridge like right here and a slight bump here. I mean, it's not perfectly flat. And you can see it in the light there, you know, it has that dip in there. What that's from is from the hump that's in there. This cell was always troublesome. It would always run way ahead of the others. And I mean, it's part of the reason I'm pulling these out. This cell here was just crap from day one. It would charge up real fast and then get almost to high voltage disconnect. And then once charging stopped, it would fall way back underneath all the other ones. So, you know, I noticed there is a slight, you know, if I looked at the bottom, I was looking at the bottom, and some of this discoloration on the bottom, I think, is from when I put the solvent on it to get it loose. But, you know, if you get looking at it, you can see there's just a slight little bulge to it. And I don't know if it was in there when it was new, but, you know, this cell here I've never been happy with. And, you know, I'm going to look at all the other ones. If I notice any other ones that are funny, you know, I'll show them to you. But this one I don't feel anything on, but of course then it also had the solvent put on it, you know. So, yeah, I'll go through them all. If I find the other ones, I'll let you know. So after looking at all the footage here, what do we learn from all this? Well, one thing is that we learn is don't buy grade B cells. Economically, it doesn't pay unless you're buying them at less than half price. It doesn't pay, and the reason why is, let's say a 3% loss here on capacity on the 280Ns. Those cells would last almost 27 years, whereas the 4.8% loss on the grade Bs, they'd be lucky to last 12 years. So, you know, it just does not pay. Now, granted, the battery technology will advance, you know, and something new might come along, but really it still doesn't pay because you could still use those batteries, you know, to get down to, when you get down to end of life, considered at 80% capacity. You know, you get twice the amount of lifespan out of those, you know. And of course, one of the first things that somebody mentioned to me was, well, how many cycles did you have in those batteries? And to tell you the honest truth, I don't know. They're not cycled fully every day. And in 3 years of time, I doubt that there's 100 some cycles per year on them. So, you know, it's not a case of cycle life. It's more of a case of calendar aging. So, the second thing is, of course, that these are charged at a low C rate, usually about 0.1 C. The second thing is these were never charged above 3.45 volts as a rule. And in the shop here, though, I do charge at 3.5 volts. So, you know, if you're going to charge, you know, your cells, charge them up between 3.45 volts and 3.5 volts. And I think you'll be safe. That way you get a good balance on them. Another one is the temperature. These cells are always in my basement, you know, and they never see anything for a high temp, and I think that makes a huge difference. But the one thing that I really think makes a huge difference is, of course, compression. And if you're going to have to pull your cells out of compression, even if you have to have one cell out, put them back in compression as fast as you can. Don't let them sit around, because I think you're going to get a little bit of that swelling. I think that's what I run into. And I think that you won't have any problems getting them right back in compression. And, you know, that's where I think some of that issue came from. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like what you see here, hit the like and subscribe button. I have more content coming. Until later, catch some rays, and we'll see you next time. Doug Zoya here once again, and today's video is capacity testing of some cells I removed from my house. In the video, I'll mention that these cells were 3 years old or a little older. They were actually, the 280Ns were 4 years and 6 months. So 4.5 years old from the day they shipped out of port. And the 280Ks are 3.75 years, 3 years and 9 months. I also mentioned that I used them for 2 years in my house. That was actually 3 years. And